Good morning, everyone. It's so good. I'm going to come close because I want to see you all. It's so good to see you. So good to be here. Maria, you're running late.
We're back.
That's one extra day in purgatory for you. But it's so wonderful to see you. And just a couple things before starting. I'm so grateful for all of your leadership, all your administrators, all your practitioners, all your musicians, but just two things that I'm just so proud and grateful for. And the first is your incredible youth program, Lisa Ortiz, with the support of Kathy Strang and Wenda, and how awesome that you are maintaining a thriving youth church here. To me, it's always the most important thing that happens. And so at the end of the service, we're all going to go over there and tell them what we did today, okay? Do you think we can all fit? And the second thing, I really want to share how grateful I am for Nicole Von Atzigen and Michael Heinley. You know, this church grows ministers. That's what we do here. And no matter which direction you go, you get to take credit for all of our success. And to see Michael and Nicole grow before you into the awesome ministers that they already are and continue to become is just so cool. And what a blessing to have both of you here at this church, Nicole and Michael. Thank you. So it's so good to return, and that's my topic this morning, is returning. And I want to talk about returning as a spiritual practice. And I love something that Nelson Mandela once said. He said that it's I'm paraphrasing, he said it's something else to return to a place that you haven't been to in a long time to see not how it, but how you yourself have changed. Isn't that kind of a profound statement? And I think it works for something like me. I haven't been here, and it's been 7 months since I've gotten to be here in this beautiful sanctuary here. But it's not just leaving a place that you haven't been for a while and returning, because returning is something that we're doing all the time. We return to wakefulness from sleep. We return to our partner sometimes on a daily or regular basis. We return to the Jewel by the Sea every Sunday. We're always returning, but the question is how are we transforming? How are we different? How are we growing and deepening? And for me, it's a profound experience to be in this sanctuary. I remember Shunryu Suzuki, a Zen teacher. He talked about being at his monastery where he learned to be a Buddhist monk and thinking to himself there, well, this is no place special. It's no place special. And then returning years later and hearing the sounds of the bowls and smelling the incense and seeing the faces of the monks praying. And he said that tears began to stream from my eyes and from my nose and from my mouth. And I'm not going to do that here because it would be a very blubbery sermon, but to smell the bagels slightly burning in the kitchen, to see Bob Papp in the garden, to see Steve behind the soundboard, to see all of the beautiful faces in prayer is such a beautiful thing. And how have I changed in returning? And for me, the biggest thing is a deeper appreciation. A deeper appreciation for life, a deeper appreciation for this spiritual community. I always had it. I always will, but gosh, isn't it's something to see what a wonderful congregation this is. What mature, loving, strong, yes, feisty, weird, quirky, tough, but what amazing individuals make up this awesome Jewel by the Sea. I don't think that there's a more mature, centered, or spiritual congregation on this planet than the one that's at this church. And, returning is to me, it's a spiritual practice because we don't just return when we leave a place and come back to it. We return whenever we forget and then we remember something. And let me tell you that if you are forgetting anything in your life, if you are failing to appreciate anything in your life, it's time to return. It's time to return to see your loved ones as the truth of who they are, your spiritual community as the truth of what it is, yourself as the truth of who you are. When we fail to appreciate our life or others, we have forgotten, and it's time to come back and return, not just once in a while, but on a daily and sometimes even a moment-by-moment process. I love something that Mr. Rogers said 50 years ago this year that he started his television show. Has there been a greater ministry? He says, "Our world hangs like a magnificent jewel in the vastness of space. Every one of us is a part of this jewel. In the perspective of infinity, our differences are infinitesimal. We are intimately related. May we never pretend that we are not." And for me, when I lack appreciation for myself or my life or my partner or my churches, however it may look, I've pretended that things aren't precious. And I love these words just not only for our world, but I love them for our church. So I'm going to put church in here in this word. So our church hangs like a magnificent jewel in the vastness of space, our jewel by the sea. Every one of us is a part of this jewel, even the one that press your buttons. In this perspective of infinity, our differences are infinitesimal. We are intimately related. May we never pretend that we are not. So Mr. Rogers said some wise stuff. And it's important for us to remember that we are a part of something precious in living. And so whether you're returning to something that you return to every day or after 7 months, remember, it's not about the thing you're returning to. It's about bringing yourself wholly and completely with full appreciation. Then you can give yourself back those little pieces that you may have lost along the way. You know, another area where I've changed is in terms of trust. I feel like my life has demanded me to trust at even a deeper level. And for me, I've kind of figured something out about my life. See if this is true for you. That attribute that you're the best at is also that one in which you have the most growth to do. You know, like I think my best attribute is usually listening. I strive to be a good listener, but I also have to say that the area where I need to grow most is in my listening. And so I found that to be true as well with trust. It's what my life is demanding the most of me right now, and also it's the area where I lack the most too. And it's kind of a scary thing to leave a life that you're very comfortable in. Not that it's not hard work, but you're very comfortable in. And you know those people who say, you've got to get out of your comfort zone. You know, you can't be comfortable. Well, I can't stand those people. They drive me crazy. I really love I love being comfortable, and there's something really good about it, but you do have to stretch. And I knew for me, you know, in my ministry, even when I began it, that in order to be the minister that I knew that I could be, I had to always be committed to my own thriving. In order to be the person that you are meant to be, you must be committed to your own thriving. And sometimes, folks, it sucks because you have to let go. You have to be willing to change and transform. You have to speak up for yourself. You have to be vulnerable and intimate. And guess what? You even have to make mistakes. See, trust isn't that process of knowing exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to happen that way. Trust is the willingness to believe in your own soul, to believe so strongly in your own virtues that you can thrive even in the unknown of your life. And that, for me, is what I've been called and charged to do in so many different ways. You know, people call and say, Josh, are you happy in Denver? And I say, yeah, I'm happy, but not as happy as I was in Seal Beach. Are you happy at the Mile High Church? Yeah, I'm happy, but not as happy as I was at the Seal Beach Church. And they say, well, do you regret your decision? And I say, every day. However, I'm so grateful that I made that decision, because I know that in order to be who I am, I always have to be committed to my own thriving, even when I don't know exactly what it looks like. You know, I remember having this experience before I proposed to my wife, April, who'll be coming to visit you in a few months. So you hear that, sweetheart, you've committed. I remember sitting down and saying, well, what's most important? What are those vows? What does she have to promise me so that we can get married? What's most important to me? And, and I really thought about it. Most of those vows, they don't really matter to me. I don't care if she kisses Paul Woods in the parking lot. He's a cute guy, and I want to kiss Paul Woods in the parking lot. Look how cute he is. There he is. Look at Paul. Look at him. Oh, my God, you don't get any cuter. So, I'm not worried about that stuff, but what the conclusion I came to is it's so important to me that I marry someone who's committed to their own thriving. And that's what she is, and that's what she does. And I have to be that too, and know and trust that through that we co-create with Spirit a marriage and a family and a life together that works for us. It's so important. It's so important for this church that you're committed to your own thriving. I love the ministerial covenant, and it's kind of like a marriage. It's like a relationship getting a minister, but I want you to have that consciousness that I need no minister to complete me. I am whole just as I am, and I'm going to be the minister that I want to find. I'm going to be those principles. I'm going to be that radiance. I'm going to be that honesty. I'm going to be that integrity. I'm going to bring people together and be present in such a way that I'm open to the heart and how God shows up no matter how challenging or messed up it seems to get. But when you're walking the path of trust, which is essential to the spiritual practice of returning, you're going to find moments where you trip up, where mistakes happen, where we fumble. Mel Brooks said, as long as the world is turning and spinning, you're going to get dizzy and you're going to make mistakes. I remember just a few months before I moved to Seal Beach, I was living in San Diego, and I was standing outside my apartment, and this white pickup truck came by really quickly, and all of a sudden it just flipped. It was like an action movie. I was at Universal Studios or something. It just flipped like 3 times, and it slid, and it was just right in front of me. And there was a young man inside struggling to get out, and you know how they say you get this adrenaline rush, and you can do amazing things. Well, my back hurt for like a year, but I'm just there, and I'm trying to just tilt this truck however I can. And here's this guy, and he somehow squeezes through the window, and the car is smoking and all of this stuff, and he's brushing himself off, and he looks at me like to say, did that just freaking happen? And I looked at him to say, yes, that just freaking happened. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and then he looked behind me, and then he turned around and he started running away like this. And then all these cop cars and these sirens came around the corner. And I got to be honest with you, I just turned away and walked back into my apartment. I had aided and abetted the escape of a fugitive. And you're welcome, sir. And so, would I do that over again? Absolutely. Absolutely. How could it happen either way? It was blubbery. It was mistake-filled. Probably dangerous. I hope they caught him. But trust is not about knowing how things are supposed to work out. It's knowing that you have built within you the principles, the values, the virtues, the ordained spirit in which to act in such a way that it doesn't matter what happens, because you were true to you. Never let that go. Never release that. In your life, as your spiritual community, as your family, whatever it is, stay true to who you are and let God sort out the rest. Always. It's not easy to trust. It is fun to appreciate. But for me, the other thing that's changed is I think my heart's open a little bit more. And we always want a widening of heart in our life. And I don't know about you, but you can't really return and appreciate and live in trust with something if your heart's closed. Life can open our hearts if we're willing to open it up in a more powerful way. And last month at the Golden Globes, President Oprah was speaking, and she said something that I thought was quite profound. She said, and I'm paraphrasing too, she said, there is nothing more powerful than when you speak your truth. There is nothing more powerful than when you speak your truth. Is that true? Think about that. you have to sit with it for a while. It could have been taken right out of an Ernest Holmes book, and it probably was. There's nothing more powerful when you speak your truth. And of course, she wasn't talking about prayer. She was talking about this women's movement that we see in our country of women speaking up for themselves and standing up as themselves and knowing a greater world ahead of them and educating us men, hopefully along the way while we flounder and take our time in figuring it out. But it's a powerful thing. And yet I'd have to add an addendum to Oprah's statement, and that is because to speak your truth, you have to open your heart. To speak your truth, you have to open your heart. And to open your heart, it cannot be closed to anyone or anything else. In order to truly speak your truth, you have to be able to hear someone else's. In order to open your heart, it has to be open enough to include anybody and everyone. Think about that person that presses your buttons. We can go around and we'll see, we'll name each name, whoever it is. Whether you know them or not, or they're sitting next to you right now, I don't know. But whoever it is, and know that in order to speak your truth, in order to open your heart, no one can be left outside of it. Nothing. You can move to the left, you can move to the right, you can let them have their heart space somewhere else. But if you want to truly live a spiritual life, then no one can be allowed to live outside of it. No one outside of your Joel, no one outside of your consciousness. That willingness to grow, to deepen, and to love. And so there are three things there for returning to our lives on a daily basis. Cultivate deeper appreciation. Live in trust, which means not knowing what's going to happen, but knowing how to get there. Do you hear that one? You don't need to know where you're going, but you know how to get there. Practicing your truths, your principles. And third, having an open heart. It can always be wider. It can always be more expansive. And when it's hurt, or when you need to surround it, that's where you put in those guidelines that work for your life to rebuild that trust, to grow, to find a sense of appreciation again. I have one more quote to share with you, if I can find it here. It's from Pascal Merci. He said, "We leave something of ourselves behind when we leave a place. We stay there, even though we go away. And there are things in us that we can find again only by going back there." The place where we return the most is to our own consciousness, to our own being. And so we must always remember that no matter what it appears that we may have lost in our life, it can be recovered. That wherever we feel that we are behind in our lives, it's possible to get ahead. And remember that whatever we have forgotten, we can always remember. Meister Eckhart, who Rachel was quoting earlier, he said a lot of profound things. He said that the eye in which I see God is the eye in which God sees me. But he also didn't always talk about God as a presence, but he would talk about God as a space. Just like in that eye, he might say it differently. He might say, the space in which I see God is the space in which God sees me. God is that space where love acts. God is that place where transformation happens. God is that community where people join together in depth and in opening. And are you making that space for God in your life? Meister Eckhart also said that he'd never heard the voice of God, but he'd felt the presence of God like someone clearing their throat in an empty room. Feel that clearing of the throat. And know that when you take care of these three things, the appreciation, the trust, and the opening of your heart, you create a space for God to exist in your life. You create a space for the sacred to reveal itself in your life. You make a space for forgiveness to take place, for grace to become, for abundance to prosper, and just to be safe in your own skin in your own being. So if you don't mind, go within with me for a moment. I'm going to invite Stacy and Rock back up here. And Stacy, if you want to doodle for a moment on the keys, you can. And I just invite you to take a deep breath, and if you're so willing, ask yourself, what am I called to that much more deeply appreciate in my life? What am I being called to return to with greater appreciation? And ask yourself, where in my life am I being called to trust? To trust the path I'm on, even though I may not know what its destination is, to understand that all I need to know is to be fully who I am, ready for anything that comes on that path. And what in my life is calling my heart to open that much more? To allow love to come in, to allow love to come out, to allow my truth to be spoken, but also allowing the depths of my being to listen to those around me who need to be heard. So knowing that bringing these three things together, we return to our divine Creator, to our divine sonship, our divine daughtership, to our divine understanding. We allow that divine thing we know and see vast and far off to also be the most close and near thing to us. Closer to us than our very breath, nearer to us than our cell phones, more a part of who we are than anything. Allowing this divine to touch and move our hearts, I know it leads each of us in incredible and fantastic ways. And so it is. Amen. Thank you, everybody.